Good Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here on this Sunday. Thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here, and let's take a look at what's going on. The first thing I want to talk about is there's a sign of hope with this ship that's lodged in the Suez Canal. And a lot of people would overlook this, but I honed right in on this because this is important. This says video shows tugboats honking in celebration as they moved the Suez Canal ship a small distance, but it remains lodged. Okay? This is an indicator to me, the fact that these tugboats were actually able to move that ship is an indicator to me that it's not mired as bad as I thought it was. The fact that they were actually able to move it. And of course, they would have to be moving it sideways, not moving it forwards because its bow is pointed at the bank. So they can't move it forwards. They have to be moving it sideways. And that would mean there's not as big an obstruction underneath that ship as I thought. Now, they got plans to try to get that thing out of there during high tide. High tide might help a lot. They got 2 more big tugs coming in. So it's hopeful that maybe they can pull this thing out. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what. If this thing does remain lodged for an extended period of time, it's going to have a tremendous impact on the entire world. You say, well, what kind of an impact are we talking here? We're talking an impact where you might want to go and say you want to go this summer and go out tenting, right? So you go to Amazon to buy a tent. Say this thing stays in there for a long time. You might find that half of the tents are sold out. That's the kind of impact it can have. You can find that even things like you buy in your grocery store, an awful lot of these ships coming through here are loaded with livestock and everything else. Everything you can think of, 30% of everything that feeds the entire world comes through the Suez Canal. 30%. That's a lot. But something like, I think it's like 12% or something of oil, or 16% or something like that of the oil. That's why we're going to see oil prices go up. And the longer this thing stays in there, the more trouble this is going to mount for the entire world. I'm hopeful that they're going to get it out and get it out soon. And this is the most hopeful sign I've seen of the fact that these small tugboats were actually able to move this ship a small distance. Would indicate that it's not as jammed in there as I thought it was. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to move it at all. If it was completely mired in there really tight, they wouldn't have been able to move it at all. They wouldn't have been able to budge it. The fact that they could slide it sideways, they call it a small distance, is a good sign. A really good sign. Now, they got dredgers in there working, digging all that earth out. They've moved something like 25,000 cubic yards of this muck away. They're working at it. They're working as hard as they can. We should be thankful that they're coming in to the rescue and trying to get this thing out of there, What a thing to happen! Weird. Talk about weird. This is one of the weirdest accidents I've ever seen, but the implications for the world, is tremendous. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Bank has decided not to extend the SLR past the end of this month. So it expires, the SLR. But they're going to do other things to help the banks out. Federal Reserve to lift bank dividend limits and buyback restrictions in June. Following a recent move to lift the SLR exemption amid improving economic outlook, the U.S. Fed has given banks more leeway by removing, as well as was largely anticipated, the limits on bank buybacks and dividends come the end of June. It says if major U.S. banks pass the next round of stress tests with adequate capital, they will be able to increase buybacks and dividends to shareholders as early as June 30th. The Fed announced on Thursday. As a precautionary measure, the Fed restricted major banks from raising dividends at the beginning of the pandemic, causing them to accumulate additional capital for lending as the U.S. economy lapsed into a recession. However, the restrictions took a toll on the bank's returns while also raising alarm over the potential for an onslaught of loan defaults, which evidently never materialized. With the positive outlook on the U.S. economy broadening, the entire banking industry has been able to close the gap between the S&P 500, especially after the Fed relaxed a constraint on buybacks in December. To see what the full impact of the SLR ending at the end of this month is going to be, we're going to find out very soon, because we're almost to that period. Come April Fool's Day, it's just like Thursday of this week, we're there. And we're going to find out what's going to happen with this. But I'm thinking that it might be a tempest in a teapot, because the Fed is going to help the banking system by lifting bank dividend limits and buyback restrictions in June. And this might help temper whatever problems that we run into. You know, we're headed, like I told you guys, this is going to be a rough ride, the first quarter. I told you that in the fourth quarter of 2020. I told you guys, I said, it's going to be a rough ride the first quarter of 2021. Right? And I said we could have a crash. The possibility of a crash during that period in time. And that period in time is January, February, March. Well, we're just coming out of it now. Right? And then I predicted an economic recovery for the summer. Well, we're on track, guys. For it's not going to be an economic recovery where we instantaneously go back to what we had back before the pandemic. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about here is better than what we did have during the pandemic, if you follow my reasoning. In other words, a somewhat of a return to normal, but not. It's not going to be a super vibrant recovery or anything like that, but it's not going to be bad like it was back in January, back in December of last year. I'm going to just come right out and say it. We had a lousy Christmas. I'm expecting this Christmas to be a pretty good Christmas. You know, and so we got months of this tepid, I'm going to call it a tepid recovery, because it's going to be a recovery, but it's not going to be a go back to what we had. Right? And it's going to last quite a long time. I'm expecting it to last right through probably the first quarter of 2022, and maybe even the second quarter of 2022, before the real inflation's going to start to take the economy down. Inflation's what's going to take us down. Then. And moving into the final quarter of 2022, the inflation is going to be so bad that it's going to start to drag us into an inflationary depression, which is the worst kind. And then in 2023, I'm expecting hyperinflation. And I'm expecting it not to last for a long time. I'm expecting it to last for about a year. But it's going to turn the world into Venezuela. That's what it's going to do, guys. Probably in 2023. And it's going to be bad, and they're going to have to do a reset at the end of it. Probably the final part of 2023. They're probably going to have to do some sort of a reset, you know, and make money again. And so for all these people out there thinking that the government's going to support them with social programs and stuff, you got to stand on your own 2 feet, because that money that they're going to send you in these social programs and stuff is not going to be worth the numbers that's on it. They're just going to keep increasing the numbers on it. Adding a zero, adding another zero every few months, just like they did in Venezuela. You're going to be able to buy anything with it. Maybe not even subsistence. You know, where you just buy enough to buy your groceries. Might not even cover that. You got to stand on your own 2 feet, and you got to start taking financially, you got to start taking responsibility for what you're going to do. what are you actually going to be able to hold and own in your hand when everything's being stripped away from you? You know, and this is where they're going with this sort of thing, because they're not going to increase wages that are not going to keep up. It will increase wages, but it's not going to keep up with the rate of inflation. This inflation is a hidden tax. So basically, what I guess what I'm telling you guys is they're going to tax you and tax you with this hidden tax called inflation, to where you're going to have to keep downsizing unless you're rich. You know, I mean the 1%. Unless you're a 1%er. If you're on the other side of that, if you're in the 99% with the rest of us all here, they're going to keep using that secret hidden tax of inflation to keep taking you down lower and lower and lower until you keep downsizing, downsizing, downsizing. And what are you going to be in the end be able to hang on to that you can keep, so that you need certain things you need in life in order to survive? You need a warm place to sleep. You need a meal to eat. These are things that you need, not things you want. These are things you need. You need a warm bed. You need meal to eat in the daytime. You need water to drink. You know, these are your essential things that you need. And so to provide those things for yourself, it might in the end actually be difficult. I know right now, maybe you're inside your house and everything. You're going, Glenn, come on. I own my own house here. You know, I got money in the bank. You know, I got a car in my driveway, and this ain't gonna happen to me. Well, you got a certain income coming in. It depends on the person, you know. Different people have, some people have less income, some people have more, but it's enough right now to maintain your lifestyle, maintain your house, maintain your car, and everything else. You're going to find these prices increase so quick, and you're going to find the taxes that they send you are going to go up so fast. Your property tax might go up 10 times in 1 year. And even if you own your own home and you're not even paying a mortgage, you're just paying property tax, the property tax might go up higher than the mortgages. Double it, triple it, just in property tax. And if you complain, they'll make it higher. And so there's you being squeezed. Your taxes, your price that you pay for your electricity bills might go up. Look what they did in Texas. People use power for a couple days and they send them $10,000. We want 8,000, whatever, you know, whatever, just like an arbitrary number, and they got this big huge bill with this 5 zeros on it, and their jaw dropped open. Well, this is going to become common practice, you know, and all of a sudden you're going to get sticker shock, and you ain't going to be able to pay all this stuff, and they're just going to keep clamping the clampers on you tighter and tighter and tighter to where you have to downsize. You say, well, right now my house is 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. I'm going to have to move to the other side of town and get myself a 1 bedroom, 1 bath house, you know, because I can't afford this place. The taxes is eating me up. I can't afford it. I can't afford to pay the tax and buy my food. Income taxes are going to go up. Taxes on taxes on taxes. They're trying to get all these taxes so that they can pay for everything that they've done. But the more they squeeze, the less they're going to get. And this is a fact. So they're going to allow the hidden tax to get you. You're going to get sticker shock. You're going to go into Walmart, and it's going to be like you've walked into Neiman Marcus, for crying out loud, on Beverly Hills Boulevard. And your prices are going to be so high. You know? And you just ain't going to be able to make ends meet. So you're going to have to downsize. Well, you're going to get down to a certain point where you're going to say to yourself, hey, what is it that I can really hang on to so that I have these things I really need? I need a bed. I need a meal. You know? The things you really need. Because in this situation where they're squeezing you and you're downsizing, 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 you got to have something that you can actually hang on to so that you can not be a street on the street. Because it's going to come to a period in time, not too far from now, where the person that's on the street, right on the concrete, laying on the concrete there with maybe he hasn't even got a blanket, he's not as good off as the guy that's got a shopping cart. The guy's got a shopping cart, and he's living inside a shopping cart. Way better off, and he's got a tarpaulin over him. He's way better off. Well, what about the guy that's got living out of his car? It doesn't matter what car he's living out of. He could be living out of a Toyota Corolla, or he could be living... He's better off than the guy that's got a shopping cart. And the guy that's got a big RV, he's way better off than the guy that's got the Toyota Corolla that he's living out of. And then it moves on to the small homes. You know, if you got a small home and you're able to keep it, you're better off. Like, it just... This situation that we're going into... It's, in a one way, it's kind of terrifying, but in another way, you know, it has to happen. And the reason why it has to happen is in math. M-A-T-H. The math, you just cannot keep arbitrarily printing endless amounts of currency units without at a certain point, even with all the manipulations, even manipulating the price of gold and silver down so that it makes your currency units look better, you know, all the manipulations that they do is not going to matter in the end. Those currency units are going to buy less and less and less, and the people that see that are going to say, hey, I'm going to spend them more and more and more, and you get what's called a crack up boom. It has to happen. It's in the math. Trying to figure out exactly when this crack up boom's going to start is very difficult. I'm pegging it at 2023 is when I believe it's going to actually happen. We're getting close enough to it now where you can almost smell it. Investors are smelling it. They see signs of inflation coming. You know you're getting really close to it. You know, it's kind of like when a storm's coming and the sky's starting to darken. You know you're getting close to the storm. That's the way with this. We're finally getting really close to it. I've known that this was coming for years. I've been on my channel saying it's coming for years, but didn't come. You know? But why did I know? Years ago. Before we got this close now that the sky's starting to darken and we can actually start to see the front edge of it. Before it was coming, how did I know it was coming? Math. M-A-T-H told me that this has to come. In fact, since 2008, anybody that really studies these things knows that this is coming. And how do they know? Because they couldn't let the system collapse in 2008. It would have been a tragic disaster. And they come within 2 hours of having it collapse. If they couldn't let it collapse in 2008, now that they've levered it 4 times bigger, the bubbles are 4 times bigger, how on earth can they let it collapse now? Well, the opposite side of not letting it collapse is you got to keep pumping it up. And every time it starts to collapse, you got to pump it up bigger and bigger and bigger. There comes a point where you can't pump it up any bigger because it's starting to collapse more than you can dump the money in on one side. Money's flying out on the other side. It comes a point where the bubbles all start to deflate no matter how much money you pump into it. But all that money you're pumping in on that side to keep the bubbles from deflating causes a hyperinflation. A crack up boom. That's right where we're headed. Trying to time it. I think they're gonna be able to squeeze it by until about 2023, and then I think it's gonna be game over, guys. And you know, this thing goes down, that's when you got to consider what can you actually hang on to in a hyperinflation like that, so that you're gonna have a bed and a meal and water. Because I'm going to tell you what, there's going to be people out there that don't have that during the hyperinflation. And some of those people right now might be considered quite wealthy. They're going to lose it all because they're not divested from the currency that's hyperinflating. Maybe they got huge bank accounts right now. Maybe they got $10 million right now in the bank. But they're keeping it all in the dollar. And if they try to ride this thing out to the bitter end, they'll end up with zero, a big fat zero. So they got their chance just like you to hedge. They got their chance right now to hedge. And maybe they're not taking it. They watched my show enough, they would take their opportunity, and they'd be thankful when the hyperinflation actually hits, because they'd have something that they could hang on to keep them from being without a meal, without water, and without a bed. You got those three things, you're golden. If you're able to hold those three things right through the hyperinflation, you're golden. Because you'll be able to sleep every night in a warm bed, and you'll have water to drink, and you have food to eat. You'll sail right through this thing unless you catch some sort of whatever. I don't know. Who knows what'll be around in 2023. Germany may be forced into a hard lockdown as the COVID cases surge. Chancellor Merkel will appear on the Anne Will Show Sunday evening. New cases in Germany have hit the highest level since January. Wow. German cases topped 28,000 on Saturday, more than 3 times the rate than at the start of the month, underscoring the challenge faced by authorities. Well, that's sad news, guys. Germany might have to go back into lockdown. Boy, we've had really hard. The last year and a half has been unbelievable. And now, it's just, we got the Suez Canal blocked off. Who would think it, Anyway, listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, and do all that stuff. Hit the notification icon and everything, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.